In this video, I'm going to talk to you about what the Star Wars role-playing game is, what to expect as a player, maybe for the first time playing it, and also how to create a character for the game. Okay, so I've been collecting West End games, RPG guides, and supplements for a little bit now. They are pretty expensive, but I think the lore found in them is really fantastic. And I've always wanted to play this, but I didn't grow up playing Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't really have any friends that did that. So when the missus and I started talking about this with some different friends, essentially it's like, well, why don't we just do it? And I ended up kind of taking on the role of game master because I don't know, maybe it's just I like rules and I just nerd out about this stuff, like the RPG stuff a lot. And so this video is really going to kind of serve as an insight to like, this is how our friend group has been learning and understanding how to play this. Now, this is going to be for somebody who is newer to the West End games, like role-playing game. And I'm not an expert by any means, but if anything, this is documenting that you don't need to be a tabletop RPG expert to play this game. All you need is the role-playing game guide, your imagination, and some dice and friends. And you can have a lot of fun. So I do have this right here. The second edition, this one was pretty cheap on eBay, which was pretty cool. You can pick up different versions, but I'm going to be showing you a digital version of the second edition, revised and expanded, because it adds some really good things for the players and some unique gameplay things that I think are definitely worth utilizing. But to get into what to expect, there is a player handout in that updated and expanded version that a game master should hand out to all of the players. And this basically says, hey, here's how the game works, here's what to expect, and all of that kind of good stuff. Now, I said that I've never really played tabletop RPGs, and there are some with miniatures, there are some without. This one is in what's called like basically a theater of your mind. So there is a individual and collective group imagination that is implanting you into the story. And so what's really cool is it is truly, by definition, a role-playing game. You are going to have a character, and together as a team, you're going to be cooperating on these big adventures that you're taking. And these adventures will have scenes like the movies. It's meant to be very cinematic. And then you're going to have these rounds where the game master is going to set context and he's going to give you a scenario. And you have to decide, how would your character respond? What's best for the group? And you're trying to navigate. You're basically making a movie in real time. And then depending on your character sheet and what you're trying to do, you're going to roll the dice and the game master is going to help you progress the game. And it's not necessarily about like winning, accomplishing all this and having losers. And instead it's really about having fun. Like that's the most important thing. And remember, this is Star Wars. And so it is, you know, it's focused on the hero's journey, and it's more fantasy than sci-fi. But anything that could happen in the Star Wars universe can happen here. And so what's cool is it actually motivates you to learn more about the lore, to read more of the EU, and to get more into this really awesome universe that we all love. So if you've ever played like maybe thinking old school like Fallout 1, Fallout 2, some old school kind of RPGs, you'll be familiar with this idea of, okay, you want to like go through these scenarios. There's all these NPCs that you're going to talk to. You want to build up your character with different skill points and things like that. And all of your equipment and all of this standard RPG things, except in a non-digital form. If you've played action RPGs, whether it's something more modern, whether, you know, it's like The Witcher, or if you've played maybe kind of soft action RPGs, like if you're thinking of like Kingdom Hearts, something like that, where it has RPG elements in it, the same thing takes place. The game can vary greatly depending on your character, how you play, your style, your skill point attributes, all of those things. So we're just taking those concepts of gaming, video games, and taking it back to its truest roots, like in the tabletop RPGs. And like a lot of us in our friend group, I don't think actually any of us have like played these before. And if we can do it, you can do it too. So I want to talk about characters, because this is going to be one of the most important things of how you play. There are specifics when it comes to like what happens in the game, but once you get your character down, your game master will be able to walk you through all of those successive things. So first, when we're talking about your character, you're going to have 6 different attributes. And these are a very broad stroke of how your character, or how capable your character is in different skill sets. So for instance, this is the same 6 that everybody has. You will have what's called like 18D typically, unless you're like an alien and you have 12D, or you're a droid and you have 12D. You're going to have 18D, which means 18 die code to split across these. Now, I think typically you have to have kind of like 2D in everything unless a template says otherwise. But even here, this line, it says a die code of 2D is about average and a die code of 4D is pretty good. So when we're looking at these, we have dexterity, which is your character's hand-eye coordination and agility. Knowledge, which is your character's knowledge of the galaxy. Mechanical, your character's mechanical aptitude or ability to pilot vehicles, starships, and the like. Perception, your character's powers of observation and the ability to convince others to do things for him. Strength, your character's physical strength, health, and ability to resist damage. And technical, your character's technical aptitude or ability to fix, repair, and modify all kinds of technology, including starships, droids, and vehicles. Now, for instance, this right here says if you attributed 3D to dexterity, that would be 3 die codes, right? So what this means is that when your game master says, hey, give me a dexterity check, you're going to roll 3 dice, and the total number on those dice is going to determine what happens, because your game master is going to set a difficulty level when you are trying to do something. And you want to make sure that you're, depending on whether you hit various things, you may have like a failure, or you may struggle a little bit, or you just may blow it out of the water. So, which is really cool. And in a moment, we will talk about how this is all balanced on a character template. But just for kind of an example, you'll see stuff like this. Like this is a character template. You see like 2D plus 1 or strength 3D here. So this is how it's going to be spread out. But just for the meta level of character templates, let's talk about skills. So underneath each one of these attributes, like we talked about dexterity, perception, knowledge, strength, mechanical, technical, you also have a list of skills. And you have 7 skill points to spend. Like you have 7D basically that you can spend. And in this, there are specific things that you are going to do. So like maybe you're going to fire your blaster, or maybe you're going to try and fix a droid, or you're going to try and like use some street smart skills to do something, or you're going to try and have perception to maybe like sneak around, or to con someone or convince them. Different things like this. So those skills are going to fall under your attributes, and you have an additional 7D for those, so 7 dice. And so what's really cool is that when you're actually, like for instance, let's say here, when we're looking at this character template, if you had, let's say dexterity, 2D plus 1, this plus 1 right here is, it's called a pip. That's maybe a little bit more advanced, but you can split a die up into some different pips. But if we have dodge under dexterity here, what you could do is you could maybe have 2D for dodge. So your character, although this dude, this alien student of the Force, doesn't look like he'd be very good at dodging things. You could say, okay, I have 2 dice for dexterity and I have an additional 2D dodge, which means you get to just roll 4 dice because you're really good at that particular skill. And so that is going to increase your likelihood of accomplishing what you're trying to do. Maybe dodge blaster fire or dodge a vehicle coming at you, something like that. So some important skills. Check this player handout if you get that, because like think about firing blasters, brawling parry, like somebody's trying to come at you and you parry that attack, dodge, just melee combat, or knowledge skills. Maybe you have good knowledge in alien species or languages, planetary systems, like you especially if you want to jump to different star systems and go to different planets, you could be like, that's right, I want to go here, I think we should go here. And your GM can be like, hey, give me a knowledge check. Also survival. Maybe you're in a really harsh environment, like on Tatooine, it's a sandstorm and your character has some survival instincts. So go over these, and there actually is like a skill section in the book. So you could find these PDFs online and go through and build this if you want like a totally custom character, or like we'll look at in a moment, you can use the actual character templates. So like I said, your game master, he's going to assign a difficulty to something. And so you can't just be like, hey, I'm the most goated character ever. I'm going to do the craziest things in existence, because that's going to be incredibly unfair to the party. So there's going to be some realism to what you're doing in the Star Wars universe. And so what's cool is, depending on what you're choosing, you're going to get a prompt to roll those die. And what I will say is that you do have character points. So you start with 5 character points, and you also have a force point. And this is actually talked about here on the special statistics. So basically with these character points, you can roll and choose to add a character point to an action. And that just gives you a little bit better chance of having success in that. Now, you don't want to spend them all up front, because you can save these character points to kind of level up your characters, so to speak, in between adventures or play sessions. So you want to be careful with those. Your characters also start with a force point, unless you're force sensitive. You start with 2, and you can trust in the force for 1 action, basically, with this force point. And when you do that, you get to roll double the number of dice that you normally would. And that's really great, because when you're trying to take an action, you're like, man, this is like kind of critical. You could trust in the force and roll this dice, and you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to get it, unless it's something absolutely insane that you're trying to do. But again, this is about the hero's journey. So if you do something that's like evil, or out of anger, or just something that is on the dark side, you can get assigned a dark side point. And there's a whole subset of rules for that. But basically those stay with you, and there's like an atonement period to get rid of those. And you don't want them. We'll just say that. You don't want them. You want to be on the light side of the force, not the dark side. So whenever you are taking an action that could potentially fail, that's when you're rolling the dice. So you do have a basic stat for your movement. So if you're like, hey, I walk over to the cantina and strike up a conversation with so-and-so, that may not have a chance of failure. But if you're like, I pull out my blaster and I fire at the stormtrooper, there's going to be some different checks that can take place to make sure that happens, and to see whether you succeeded or failed. Now, like in that example, you pull out your blaster and you fire at a stormtrooper. When it's against another character, a non-player character, no friendly fire, there's going to be an opposing roll. So these non-player characters have their own set of stats. And so then you basically have to get more than them to succeed. And depending on how much more you get, there's different levels of success. Now, when you're in a play session, you're going to be going on an adventure. There could be episodes, that crosses play sessions. In these adventures, like I said, you will have scenes. And so just think of it like a movie, just different segments of what's going on in your adventure. And the actual scenes are broken down into rounds. And these rounds on average is about 5 seconds of game time. And so in each round, you're thinking of kind of 5 seconds of real time, and you're going to perform one action, and then you roll dice for that. Now, if you try and do more than one thing, you're actually going to lose one die. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to dodge behind cover, pull out my blaster, and fire. That's 2 separate actions. So the second action would lose 1 die, which means it's going to be harder to accomplish. Now, if you're like, I'm going to dodge behind this cover, pull out my blaster and fire, and then throw a grenade, right? Just a lot happening at once. Every successive thing that you do, you're going to lose a die. So you want to be very kind of judicious in what you do. And the game master will tell you, hey, here's what's going on, right? You lost a die or whatever. The last thing kind of about gameplay is the wild die, which I think is a really fun addition. So basically you're going to have 1 die that's a different color than the rest. And if you roll a 1, you're going to hit a complication, basically. Your game master could just add that to this overall score, but he could introduce a complication, like maybe your gun jams, which I think just adds to a unique level of creativity to the gameplay, where now you've got to adjust to this unknown variable. Just feels very organic. 6 is kind of cool. The way I think about it, 6 is almost like a critical success, because you get to basically roll that dice again, and then you get to add that score. So you not only get the 6 from the prior roll, but then you also get the additional roll of that wild die. So it could be like, I aim right for the stormtrooper's head and I fire, and your wild die has a 6. You not only get that added to your score, then you get it again. And so I love Fallout. So I just think of like the VATS system starting kind of in like Fallout 3. And you have those different percentages. That's essentially kind of how I think of the wild die for the kind of critical success. And for the most part, that is how the game works and kind of what to expect. There's a lot. I mean, this is a very expansive game, but I think for just getting started, that is what you need to know to pick up and understand how the game functions. Because after the rounds are going to keep moving, and then you can move scene to scene, and your game master is going to be narrating. He's going to be controlling the NPCs, the non-player characters, and helping guide your story and guide this journey and adventure that you're on. And it's a lot of fun. But when we come to character creation, I'm going to kind of address a few different levels of character creation. I'm not going to really get into the more advanced levels, because I feel like if you're here, you're probably not needing an advanced crash course on character creation. At the most basic level, you can take a pre-existing character template and just run with that. Some of these you might just need to change some of your actual skill codes here, but when you go through this, like right here, arrogant noble, right? You can see some of the attributes. The attributes are already there. This one's got kind of a blank D there. And even here you have like the bounty hunter, and you can see, okay, it's got all this. It's got some skills. You can do some quick like skill code there for your die. You have the equipment, you have your background, personality, objectives. The objectives are basically kind of like the short-term and long-term motivations for your character. But you can actually just pick up a character and go. You can just show up to a session, get a template, and go. Now, they do exist in the back of all these books. They exist here in these digital archives of the West End Games RPG guides. Also, d6holocron.com. So D6 holocron.com has all these listed. Like, look at all this. You just be like, okay, Wookiee first mate, right? And you could just see like, okay, Wookiee first mate, and you could just roll with that. Like if I pull this over here, you could just see, yeah, Wookiee first mate, and you can see all this stuff and build that out, which is really cool. The next level would be taking a character template like this, like maybe an Ewok. Maybe you want to be an Ewok. You could take this character template and adjust it. Again, for your attributes, you'd have to check for the Ewok in particular. But on average, you're going to have 18D to spend across your attributes, unless your alien species would say otherwise. You're going to have 7D for your skills, and you're going to go through there. You're going to have like a move score, you force sensitive, and droids cannot be force sensitive. That is a very important thing. But you can do this. You can take this template and make it your own, whether you just want to leave the skills alone. Maybe you want to change the story, right? Maybe you find some motivation here, but you tweak the story, or you want to change the personality. Whatever, it's cool. And even failed Jedi, right? This is just a lot of examples. What's the whole point I'm trying to get at is take a character template and tweak it and make it your own. Now, if your character is mortally wounded, like if your character dies in an adventure, you can also just grab a template, take a few rounds, figure out how you want to adapt it, submit it to your game master, and they will integrate it into the actual play session. Now, the next level I want to talk about is pretty cool. Now, I'm going to show you my son's character sheet. Now, my son is 5 years old, and we're going to kind of walk with him through this. And now, granted, we are taking on the handicap of having a 5-year-old play with us, but he loves story games, as he says it. So we're like, why not introduce him to this? So he chose to be a kind of B1 battle droid, even in the original trilogy era. He chose to be a B1 battle droid. So we created, we have all these printed out character sheets. We're working on filling his out. Basically, we just have his name here, Roger. Classic. But basically, there's this whole thing where a Jedi character, or a kind of Jedi hopeful character, which is actually my wife's character. This Jedi hopeful character, which is my wife's character here, she found Roger, because all droids need an owner. She found Roger, and she has some good technical skills. So she was able to basically get him free of needing to be dependent upon any kind of actual sys servers or anything, and he could function rather independently. And she was able to scrap him together. And because she's a Jedi hopeful, some autonomy that he may have, with different resistors being taken off of him, he longs to be a Jedi. But the tragic tale of Roger, the B1 battle droid here, is that 1, he can never be force sensitive, and 2, he can never be a Jedi. And what's cool is we generated an image where, he has a lightsaber here. I will say with your equipment, it has to make sense for how you actually got that equipment. So you can't just say, I have all the best things. In the original trilogy, lightsabers are very rare. So it's very unlikely that any character would start with a lightsaber. We just put this here because my son thinks this is super cool. And maybe at one point in some adventure way down the road, he's able to wield a lightsaber, which is really cool. But you could take a blank character sheet like this and build it out. And, you could actually take your time to go through a game guide and to really understand in depth what it looks like to build out a character. Now, the template is found in these books, and you could photocopy them. You could also find, there's so many of them online that people have adapted, maybe from Fantasy Flight games, or, West Coast games, West End games, or all these different things, or there's such a wealth of information online that you can draw from. That is so important, to just don't let any of the barriers of, oh, I don't have the books, I don't have all this, like, don't let that stop you. You could do this with a sheet of paper, even if you really wanted to. So just to recap for the players, basically what you're doing is you're going to be going on an adventure, and depending on how you build out your character with these different attribute codes, you're going to be in situations where you're going to take an action that has a chance of failure, and you're going to roll your die to see, do you succeed or do you not? And your game master will navigate all of this in these rounds. And so you want to make sure that you have your attributes, die codes spread out the way that you want them to, and list any appropriate skills. And then, focus on your background and personality, some objectives, and even some of the equipment. I forgot to note this. If you have a ship, you actually need to have debt associated with that ship typically. And so even if you start out with like this really awesome ship, you might owe money to a crime lord, or, I don't know, maybe you owe money to some Watto type junk dealer, something like that. But with that, I think that is a lot of information to cover. But I think to get started, like what to expect, how does this game work, how to build a character, that's enough to get you going. That might be more than enough to get you going. But if you've ever played West End games and there's some things that I overlooked, let me know in the comments, and let everyone else know, like, hey, here's actually a really good practice that you overlooked. Because again, these books are, rather in depth. And so a 20-minute video can't cover everything, but I think that should give you more than enough to get going. And I hope, much like our friend group, that you start a TTRPG playthrough of West End games, just like we did, because it's going to be a ton of fun. But with that, I am Mr. 2 Star Wars Nerds, and may the Force be with you always.